Hi, my name is Matthew Bellisario. Welcome back to the BellisarioSonic YouTube channel from the heart of the Deep South on the outskirts of Birmingham, Alabama, where we talk about music, talk about records, do record reviews, interviews, and much more. And today we have one of those interviews coming your way with guitar player composer David Preston from the UK, who made this wonderful record called Purple Black Volume 1. Volume 2 is now out. I did a full record review of this, needle drop on this record. I really think it's a cool album, and I'll put a link below so that you can go check out that review. Also, a link below on where you can purchase both Volume 1 and Volume 2 online. I had a wonderful conversation with David. We talked about the making of this record, a little bit about his career, playing guitar. If you're a guitar player, I think you're really going to dig this conversation that we had. So I bring you this interview with guitar player composer David Preston. I hope you enjoy these. This is a big part of this channel, is promoting new music by current working musicians. So I appreciate you guys supporting these videos, giving the thumbs up, and sharing these so that this music gets out to other people. So I appreciate you guys. Enjoy the conversation.
Cool.
Okay. All right. So we were here with David Preston today. I'm very excited to have you on the channel and talk about your new record that just came out. Just a brief introduction so some people know a bit about you. You're based in London and you're a guitarist and composer. And I guess you've been active for quite a while, playing with other people as a sideman with a lot of UK musicians, such as Asaf Circus, Emma Rovich, who I had on the channel not long ago. Jamie Murray, played with Gary Husband. You've performed and toured with many different people, including US-based musicians. You've played with vocalist Melody Gardot, Curtis Stigers. You've also played with, I noticed, with Patrick Cornelius, who I recently reviewed his record on this channel as well. You were a finalist at the Montreux International Guitar Competition, and you are also a one of the leaders and, I guess, founders of the modern jazz trio Preston, Glasgow, and Lowe, which also have, I think, two releases on the Whirlwind label, which this is also on. And you've also have played with Kit Downs before, Sebastian Rochefort, and Kevin Glasgow. I hope I'm pronouncing all those
Mm.
names correctly.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. We say Kevin. Well, we say Glasgow, but
Glasgow.
yeah, yeah. It's but it's fine.
Okay. So that's just a little bit about you. And I
Yeah,
just wanted to thank you, first of all, for coming on the channel. I love, talking to you, all you musicians and who are keeping, in my opinion, the jazz tradition alive, although you kind of span the genres in your playing. Um, so can you tell us a little bit about just your experience of growing up playing the guitar? Why did you choose the guitar and how did you get into jazz?
sure, sure, absolutely. Well, yeah. Thanks for that introduction. Yeah. Well, the very short of it is, I was given a guitar by my aunt for Christmas, I think. And when I was quite young, and somehow or other, just kind of kept with it, and just kept playing. And yeah, I was very fortunate to kind of be at school with some musicians, and people who would turn out to be great and inspiring musicians. And I, yeah, just kind of kept with it. And it's kind of like following a kind of detective trail. Music, you get into one thing, and then you hear a player on a record, or something, and then it leads you down a rabbit hole, and then before you know it, you're playing jazz music. So yeah, that's pretty much how it happens. It seemed like quite a natural process.
What were some of your favorite albums, or who are some of your favorite guitar players that you learned from?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the jazz ones, the ones that really hit me in the beginning were Wes Montgomery, Joe Pass, and John McLaughlin. And yeah, those were kind of the main ones, and then through them, you know, I got into Pat Metheny and John Schofield, and then yeah, I was always a fan of Alan Holdsworth for a long
Oh
time.
yeah.
I still am. Yeah, and it just kind of yeah, I can't really remember any one person that came before anyone else, but yeah, certainly Wes Montgomery and John McLaughlin were big deals for me. You know, um, they were probably like the kind of most formative. Yeah,
So would you
which is
like?
kind of yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I guess it's a little bit of a strange combination because you know, um, but um, yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, I guess those two were the big ones, and then and like I was saying, you know, you just kind of you know a friend of your you know friend I had a lot of friends into music and they would say check this out and you know some teachers and fellow guitarists you know they would hit me to other people and yeah that's kind of it really.
What about
uh,
education? Did you attend any schools formally for jazz music or for music education or?
yeah I mean one of the 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 things that had the biggest influence on me was I went to this uh it's kind of funny. It's in the UK. It's well, it's called the Weekend Arts College or WAC, which I know you know has a different meaning in the States. But it was a great kind of community like project where you would still have to audition, but um it wasn't like a formal like university or anything like that, but basically once a week you'd have like a I think like a 2 or 3 hour class with an established jazz musician and in a small group setting, and that was really quite a game changer for me in terms of meeting other like-minded musicians in London that were really good, you know, that they could really play despite being some of them were younger than me at the time, you know, like maybe 16, 15, 16. I was probably around 17 maybe at the time, and you know I was a little bit behind, but you know those kind of weekly sessions which I did for about maybe a year and a half 2 years, um you know were really important I think, you know, because we would get together and play like Wayne Shorter tunes and like and original tunes and like I remember you know playing Horace like a Horace Silver tune and you know all these things that maybe up until then I didn't really know about, you know. And yeah, and just having a weekly place to do it where we could just kind of play and under the guidance of a musician, a good like an established musician, this saxophonist called Tim Whitehead, who he's still active now on the scene in London. Um, but yeah, he was a really good teacher in kind of getting us to kind of think about music in a way. Yeah, so that was a big part of it. And luckily, I also, like I said, I went to school with a really great drummer who's active now still. He plays with many great artists. And yeah, we would just play every week, you know. And I think it doesn't seem like too much has changed in the way of things, you know, just getting together with friends and just playing, you know, and just making mistakes and trying kind of things and bringing your own tunes and then, you know, um, yeah, and yeah. So in a way, yeah, it seems like kind of compared to some musicians I know now, it's a bit of an old school approach. But that's just kind of how I did it.
But that's I think that's kind of the organic way of doing it, right? Is getting first of all having fun playing with everybody, and then being able to learn from all the people that you're playing with. And it doesn't necessarily have to
Yeah.
be somebody on your instrument. You can learn from others that are playing different instruments as well. Um,
Yeah. I feel in a way kind of fortunate like that, that a lot of the kind of strongest musical connections I've had with people, they've been with on instruments that are different to the guitar, you know, which I guess is kind of cool in a way because you know, um, that means you know you kind of hopefully get to play in different settings and stuff like that. So yeah,
so
that
tell us
was
a little bit about the London scene there, jazz club scene. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Are there a lot of places to play? You know, playing guitar, it, guitar is still not the most popular instrument for jazz compared to some of
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the London jazz scene, though. I'm kind of curious because it seems like it's pretty vibrant. There's a lot of new players making a lot of great
Yeah,
music.
yeah. I mean, it's a big scene. That's the thing that I often am always consistently impressed about is there's a lot of musicians and they're all kind of as musicians tend to do, especially creative ones. They're all kind of doing lots of different things. And but it still kind of blows my mind sometimes when because I think I know a lot of people on the scene. I was born in London and grew up on the scene here, but then still every now and then I'm kind of like, wow, this, I find someone who's playing great that I haven't heard of before, and it's like, oh wow, it's just another musician that kind of, has been doing their thing kind of quietly and snuck under the radar. Um, but yeah, I guess one of the cool things about London is you do have a lot of different styles. If we're talking about jazz, just under that umbrella, which is almost kind of um, it's such a kind of uh, encompassing word now. I mean, it was back in the '60s, because but now it's kind of like what even is jazz.
Right. It's grown
And
so much.
so you get a lot of musicians, yeah, and so everything from like really hard bop people who kind of want to play in that style to like fusion to there's a really good kind of more of a free avant-garde improvised scene here in London. You know, um, and yeah, and kind of everywhere, everything in between. Really, it's pretty good like that. Um, yeah. So if you're kind of into any kind of facet of jazz and creative music, you can normally find like a lot of really good musicians here that will kind of be into that thing. And as it turns out, a lot of the musicians working, they are quite proficient in being able to kind of go in a number of different ways. It's not uncommon, for example, to do like a kind of like a bop gig and then like a singer-songwriter gig and then a pop gig and then like a original modern jazz gig and then a fusion thing, and that has its good and bad things to it. The whole spreading oneself too thin and everything. But yeah, I think it's just there's so many musicians here, um, which is a good thing, I think. Um, yeah.
So I'm going to geek out a little bit. I play guitar. I'm not very good, but I really want to hear like
I noticed you play, yeah.
what kind of equipment do you use, or what amps or what pedals? This album here has a lot of cool textures to it, and you're getting a lot of really cool tones. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're
Yeah.
getting that sound?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing that crazy. I think I used the for the for the this album you're talking about in the studio. They had this really nice Fender. I think it was a deluxe reverb, maybe, and it looked really old, and you can kind of hear it breaking up on the record. And I was wondering, as I do with whenever I use Fender amps, it's like, how long are they going to last before the sound gets weird or like, flappy or, because sometimes you turn on Fender amps and they sound great for like a couple hours, but after that there's something weird I noticed, or breaking up or overheating or something. Sometimes they just blow up. And this one, yeah, just about lasted through the session. Um, and yeah, I've got this a Klon, these Klon pedals,
Hmm. Right.
um, which kind of warms up the sound quite a bit, which I've started using quite a bit now. It's kind of become a little bit of a crutch in that, I'll put it just before and and it would just kind of give it something like a little bit more. I don't know if it just makes the signal hit the front of the amp a little harder. Um, yeah, and it just kind of beefs up the sound. Yeah, and I guess you also might be hearing. I kind of went a bit overboard on this record in that I got a DI, post DI and a pre DI,
Oh,
as well as what you're hearing is the amp sound. So I think the guy who mixed it is this great mixer and masterer based in New York, actually, called Tyler McDiarmid. I think he did something with that. I don't know. You might have to ask him, but he's a guitarist himself. He's done like a few John Scofield records and stuff like that. So he's great for me because he kind of knows he does a lot of jazz, but he also understands the sound of the guitar and how that works in a jazz kind of format without kind of making it sound too clinical or kind of sterile. So I think maybe he did something, worked some magic. I don't know, with the DI. So a lot of people. It's funny, you don't hear a lot of people say they use DI for recordings. Other than Pat Metheny, I've noticed. He said a lot of the time when he records, he just goes DI. I've read that in an interview somewhere. So yeah, that's about it. And I think maybe there's the reverb is from the amp, and then the rest is I use these picks. If anyone wants to geek out, just these the Jazz 3 Ultex ones, you know. Yeah.
what about your
That's about.
guitar selection?
Well,
What?
I just used the one guitar for that whole album, which is this one. I'll grab it. It's one I've been using this one for like the last God, probably I've been playing it for about 15 years now. And it's a Gibson 356.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, it's I don't know if you can see, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
pretty it's
it is.
pretty battered and dirty, and I was quite proud the other day. I don't know if you can see this in the camera, but I've worn a hole in the bottom humbucker from using it so much. There's a
Okay.
tiny little hole there, which which is yeah. So it's had a good bit of use, but I've played it so much now, it kind of just feels like the guitar that I kind of go to for pretty much most things. Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. It just kind of it's quite a it does have like quite a strong low end to it, which can sometimes get in the way, especially in like kind of more acoustic environments, um, like with double bass or piano and stuff. But yeah, for the most part, it does the job.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
I think it's one of those things once you find, you know, guitarists like to buy a lot of guitars. It seems like you can never have enough guitars, but you always find that one that you really like
yeah,
and you kind of just stick to it and the rest of them kind of stay, in the closet. So, um,
yeah,
and then once
exactly.
they start getting worn, and of course people are paying for relic guitars now, that are pre-worn when you buy them. So, um, yeah, let's
Yeah,
talk about the
yeah. That's
record.
always been
Let's talk about the
sure.
record. So this was
Yeah,
recorded from what I'm reading at the Echo Zoo, October 5th and 6th of 2023. And you decided to split it up into two volumes. The second volume just came out, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So tell us a little bit about, first of
yeah,
all,
yeah.
the project, and then who you selected to play on this. So you have Kit Downs playing piano, Kevin Glasgow on bass, Sebastian Rochford on drums. So tell us a little bit about the project, how you put it together, and how you selected everybody. I know you've played with probably these guys before.
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, I've known all of them for a long time. But funnily enough, prior to 2021, I hadn't actually played with Sebastian Rochford, um, which was which is actually quite interesting for me because I would normally never decide to kind of record something without really playing with someone. But earlier in 2021, he called me to do a recording session for like a thing he was doing, and it was one of those things. I mean, I've known him for a long time, and even though we hadn't played together, but I just remember the very first. few notes we played together, in the same room, it just felt great, and I thought he sounded great. And he has this really curious, almost kind of mystical thing to how he plays, where he can shape the direction of the music without doing much. It's I really don't know how he does it. And it's very curious and kind of fascinating to me as a kind of player, because for the most part I play and work with drummers. I mean, I love all kinds of musicians and drummers particularly. And in previous projects and a lot of my own projects, I tend to go for drummers that I guess you could say play with a more kind of it's like they feel the music more with how they play and what they play. And Seb was kind of doing that in a different way completely. And it just mm, yeah, in that different direction to kind of write and play music with that kind of sensibility to it, that kind of approach. It also worked out, I think, that him and Kit had been playing a lot together, and they had a connection. But Kevin Glasgow and Seb had actually not played together at all, which is another kind of strange thing, to get a bass player and a drummer together, and the first time they play is like, on an album. But I obviously I'd worked with Kevin, and he's a very good friend and musical partner. We played a lot together, and I know how great he is and how musical he is, and I just kind of knew that they would sound good together. And they do, I think. So yeah, that was kind of it. And yeah, it just kind of, luckily, musically it all just kind of worked out, I think, just because of those different connections. Yeah.
Did
um
you
yeah
have the songs already written? Did you pass out lead sheets in the studio? Tell us a little bit about that, as far as the compositions, and how much of it is improvised
yeah
and how much of it is, written out.
yeah. Well, they're all I'm pretty sure I had lead sheets for everything in some form or another. Some of the songs were quite detailed, but for the most part, they were I the kind of what is it? The parameters I gave myself for this music were to not give too much information to the musicians, because I knew, Kit, well, they're all great, and that I knew that, you know I could give them something quite simple, and that would, turn into something a lot more interesting. So some of the pieces of music, I don't know if I got some here. um some of them were pretty basic. They're all handwritten. uh um like, that's the music for Purple Black. And it's just a series of dots. Uh and yeah, there's not much to it really. um and then I'm trying to find another one that is literally just a couple lines, like this one. This one was it's on the first album, called Prison Lullaby, and it's just a series of melodic lines. And we did like a couple passes of it in the studio and decided on a particular take. But that was it. That was all I gave to people, and we just kind of played it. Yeah. And yeah, I was kind of writing, I think, up until we rehearsed. We had like a rehearsal before the session, just to kind of, and I think I was writing music. I was kind of just writing right up until the first recording, and then probably just a bit before the session as well, just to kind of, just kind of make the most of it, because I'd never really approached a recording session with like that amount of material before, which is, yeah, I didn't kind of think about it at the time, which I think is good because I think if I knew I was going to try and record 20 songs in 2 days, well, I think we recorded 22 songs and we only used 20. I probably would have thought, no, that's not possible. But it was easy with them. And, so we would just record and do a couple takes maybe of the songs. I think some we just did one take. And, we didn't have time to go back into the studio and just think, oh, is this good? Is this working? And in a way that was great because it meant we could just plow on and just record. And yeah, and luckily there was enough stuff in there to kind of constitute, two albums, and it was never my intention to make two records. It was just I had all this music, and the kind of funny thing, the lucky thing, I don't know, maybe the stars aligning or something, but both albums are I think around 41 minutes each. So it was, two all of that would have been too much for one CD because I think the CD is 75 minutes.
Yeah, something like
And
that. 79, yeah, something like that.
yeah, something like that. So maybe I don't know, we might have been able to squeeze actually, yeah, maybe not. It might have just been over like something like 83 minutes. So it just worked out that it was like, oh, this fits perfectly onto vinyls and also makes for a good, album. And then, I think it's nice not having an album that's 75 minutes long. The first Preston Glasgow Low album, I think, was 75 or 74 minutes long. And it's like, yeah, who's who's asking a lot, man? I don't
Right.
just to kind of sit, to take that in, so and a lot of my favorite records, Bright Size Life, I think is like 35 minutes or something like that. And it's in, and it's you don't kind of I never listen to that record and then think, oh man, it's too short, I just think, man, that's a great record. you know
Right.
so that's kind of story of that.
And yeah, because traditionally, basically, you had 20 minutes or less per side
Yeah.
on a traditional record, which gave you anywhere from 35 to 40 minutes worth of music. And there's something to be said, I think, too, about having that, uh, you know, the theme of the record, if you will, or kind of how it all flows together, which is what I wanted to ask you next. You have two volumes, so you could have put
Mm.
those out as a double record. You chose to do volume one, volume two. How did you pick the tracks for each of those to put them
Yeah,
on those
man,
two
I mean,
records?
that actually, it's kind of cool you're asking that because no one else has done that yet in a few of the interviews, and even people have written about it haven't thought about that. And that it took me a long time to like choose the sequence because I kind of wanted the volumes to sound slightly different as much as they could, given the material. So you'll notice the second volume, if you've heard it, it's there's a lot less production on it. It's just a straight up, quartet playing some tunes. In the first record, it has some overdubs and synths and stuff. And then so kind of making them sound kind of different, but also making sure that all the songs fit and that I didn't have too much of one vibe on one record. It was like I didn't realize until after I did it that it was like kind of the most kind of it felt like I just kind of did one of the most crazy puzzle pieces, ever in terms of finding like, well, this song has to go here and this one goes there. And yeah, it took me a while. And eventually, even though I don't think I got it 100%, but it felt like, they're both in a way different, but they have, yeah, they kind of work in their own way. I think. I hope.
Yes, they both sound fantastic, and I actually have listened to the second volume a couple times.
Oh,
This
cool.
one, and they're both a bit gonna, I, they're both going to be on vinyl. I mean, this one obviously is on vinyl. The second one's going to be on vinyl as well.
Yes.
And is that going to be available? Like, I think I picked this one up on Amazon. I want to say, is the new one going to be on there as well, or is it only going to be through you?
It, it should be, yeah. It should be available wherever you would get your vinyl. And I think Bandcamp is yeah, that's normally I think it should say I'm hoping when the vinyl ships. Um, you know, yeah, so I'm hoping it will be available. Is yeah, I need to double check about that, but the last few times the records I've done, the vinyls always come a little bit after the actual digital or CD release. I think just because there's such a huge backlog with the vinyl situation in Europe at the moment, yeah. So, but I'll let you know as
Yeah,
soon as
definitely.
as soon as I get a solid date on it.
I'm excited about getting it on vinyl for sure.
Um,
And also, so tell us a little bit about
cool.
before we go about the state of jazz nowadays, and what about what do you think about vinyl records? I do a lot of vinyl record reviews. How do you view vinyl records as compared to CD or streaming?
Yeah, I mean, I I think I think it can only be a good thing. Um, Obviously, I I don't have the facilities at home. I don't have like a super expensive vinyl player or anything like that. But I I actually didn't realize the value of it until I brought out an album a few years ago. It was the second Preston Glasgow Low record, and um, we brought it out, and I did all the mixing and mastering with this guy Tyler, and I'd only ever experienced it digitally, and then I heard it being played through a vinyl on vinyl. This was like a good year after, and it sounded so different, and I heard all this other thing and information in the music and like just the way it just I just kind of thought, wow, that's almost like it's almost like worth getting something on vinyl just to experience the way the instruments relate to each other in a different way. um and it's also, and it goes now at the moment I'm digging just listening to CDs. I've got this like CD player and I'm just checking out CDs again, because I haven't actually listened to CDs in years, but I've got all these CDs and and I'm just like, wow, this, all this music I've kind of haven't checked. I bought like headphone in it, and I'm just digging, checking CDs out again. And I would like to do that with vinyl at some point, and just get some nice, so I think the value in it. And obviously the whole vinyl community really stuff being released on vinyl. I get it after shows when I'm playing gigs. People come up to me and say like, is this record on vinyl? Or I'm not going to buy the album unless it's on vinyl.
Yeah.
So so I guess it's a good thing, which is great. And it's really nice to have a record on vinyl. I think as someone, I grew up, like many musicians my age, going through their parents' albums, and just finding this or that vinyl, So it's great. Yeah. And
And
if
it's
it if
also
it
something,
yeah. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
oh no, it's also something you can have at the shows, right? People like to get the record signed and have the big artwork
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and it's yeah, I'm glad that there's still a market for it, and people are really into it, Yeah, it's not as fun as a musician taking them to gigs. That's the only thing to sell, So I've got, like a suitcase and just making sure that they're transported carefully along, with taking an amp and getting on a plane or a train or something like that with vinyl. That's not as cool, but
Yeah.
it's good that still people want to buy them, and it's yeah, and hopefully, the pressings are good. I know that is, unfortunately, I don't have that much to do with it. You'd have to ask the label about it. I remember you saying that it sounded a little bit, there was like some noise on it, which um I don't know if that's a rare thing or not, or if
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty Whirlwind does a pretty good job with their pressings overall.
cool.
There's certain places that press audiophile where they're very, very quiet. You hear no surface noise, and then you've got other ones that are good pressings, but you'll hear just a little bit of surface noise. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
on this one that there was a little bit. It wasn't anything that like made it unlistenable or took away from the music.
Oh,
So, but everybody wants to know that kind
cool.
of stuff when you review the record. Is it a audio file
Sure.
quality? Is it dead quiet? Do you hear any noise or pops or clicks, anything like that, people in the vinyl community are always interested in. So I always like to give an
Right.
accurate, but it sounds very good. The production on this is done very well, and
Oh, great.
I think it's a great record. You create a lot of cool atmospheres, and everybody's, even though it's the chord structures are fairly simple, it seems to me, on most of the tracks. There's a lot going on inside of that
Mm.
where everybody can stretch out and do all this cool stuff. So, which I think is really
Yeah,
neat.
absolutely. It's like that thing, if you give a jazz musician the least amount of information, then they'll kind of fill it up. They'll find a way, you know. And as far as the surface noise, I mean, I don't know, it might be just that Fender amp I was using because it was pretty old and vintage, and it had a lot of soul to it. So
Yeah, it sounds
so
really
it
good.
might have been that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really cool sounding
Yeah,
record.
but it's cool, man. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. It's yeah, I'm really happy with it. And so yeah, I'm actually about to start the next one. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
So I'll keep you posted on that.
Right on. Well,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit before you
Yeah.
go
Hopefully.
where you playing live at coming up, and what future projects do you have coming up before you go?
Yeah. Well, the next I'm recording Seb Rochford's new album soon, which is going to be great because he's an amazing musician. I'm recording with a great English UK jazz band called Empirical. That's next year, early next year, and my next gig for this music is going to be at the London Jazz Festival on the 23rd of November. Yeah. So anyone listening that's in London on the 23rd, that's Saturday the 23rd, come by. It's at the World Heartbeat in Concert Hall. So that's going to be fun. And yeah, and we've got a few gigs around that. And yeah, just trying to stay busy. Yeah,
Cool. Well, I appreciate you joining me today, Dave, and talking about this record. And hopefully, we'll be able to have you back on again, and we'll talk some more about some other records and other musical ideas.
absolutely, man.